getting ready for a different style with Iowa. You know, as we talked last week, Indiana was kind of intent on a 65-point game. They got that by really pounding the lane, 52 points in the lane. Iowa, on the other hand, wants to make it a 90-point game. They've struggled this week at Purdue and at Iowa State last night. But fresh in our memories is the game last year. We controlled that game most of the way, and then Sanford at the end made big shot after big shot, and we lost in overtime. Jed Howard obviously had a spectacular first half and then a first half of the second half. So for the first 30 minutes, he was remarkable. And now we're back addressing ourselves. Turnovers are too high. Free throw percentage is too low. And we're losing one-on-one battles. So we addressed some of that yesterday. This is a little bit different with 3 days of prep. But Tom makes a really good point about road. We have to answer this not just Big Ten challenge, not just the challenge of not playing well right now ourselves, but you have to do it on the road. So another day of prep, mixing in their academic challenges is just part of representing Michigan at this point.
Hey, Phil, I'll start it off. It's been a while since the program's been under 500 and has had a start like this. I'm sure you don't feel like the sky's falling, but I guess just how do you view, I guess, just the current state of where the team is at?
Again, I'm not a cliche guy, but we're 4-5 for a reason, because we're even in these individual games, we're up and down. We do some good things, but we haven't done enough consistently. I point to turnovers. I point to pace of play. We need to get back to scoring for fast break points, putting pressure on the defense, and then turning around and saying, at some point, everybody on our team is going to be challenged to guard the man in front of them, not just the scouting report, but we have to guard the man in front of us. And it's never too early, like, oh, it's December, it's only the second game of the Big Ten. Now it's time. It's time that we answer what is a foundational piece of this program, which is let's get better every day. Each player get better every day, and just address one area. And if they address one area, then we collectively are addressing a lot of areas where we need to improve. So you can't hang your head and say, historically, or like one of our plethora of managers hit me with yesterday about under 50% assist to basket. Right? I'm like, I can't process that right now. We have to play better. And the we is each of us, we have to coach better. And it is a collective we. There is nobody exempt from it to say, well, you know what, he's doing well, but other guys aren't. No, it's a collective we. We have to play better.
How much has this recent rough stretch maybe stressed the importance of doing all the little things? I mean, you make 1 or 2 free throws at Oregon, that game goes different. Box out versus Long Beach State, that game goes different, stuff like that.
It's enormous. I mean, we have good players, and we have a number of good players, but we don't have talent that just says, well, you know what, we'll make up for that. And the small things matter, particularly the competition that we're playing. And I hate to overuse a word, but the fight that we're in, these are fights. And again, knocked down, but not knocked out. or they would be collecting our uniforms. And it's a great point that you make, though. It's like a dike, like an old-fashioned dike. Oh, there's a hole over here. Let me put my hand on that hole. Okay, that solved that. Like, we didn't turn the ball over at Oregon. Okay, we covered that. But then we didn't make our free throws, so now we're covering that, and you run out of hands, right? So we have to address every issue, and we have to improve in all of these aspects. The ones that are glaring to me are one-on-one defense and our transition offense.
You mentioned it during your intro, but what specifically on defense were you focused on going from Indiana pounding the paint to Iowa's?
Transition. And then Iowa is different than a lot of teams in the Big Ten in that you could say, let's really break down their blue play. And they play conceptually. They don't play by pattern. Iowa, they play a really conceptual game of basketball, and they're going to put the ball in the air. They're going to put the ball in the air quickly. They shot the ball really well for their first, I think their last 5 games. Let me just quickly find this, because I find this stuff like fascinating. Over the last 5 games, their 3-point shooting percentage has dropped by 5 percentage points. Seems significant. They were making 6.8. They're now making 5.3. That's significant, because you expect that it's going to be a 1 or 2 or 3 possession game. They're a low turnover team. So we have to make sure that we get closeouts and shot challenges versus Indiana, you're trying to make sure that the ball doesn't get to the rim. We weren't successful doing that enough. But they were not a transition team. They came in averaging 4 threes a game. We lost a Division I game giving up 3 threes. And does make you scratch your head. And this game, their intent is to have 3 threes in the first minute. We have to make sure that we limit their 3-point and their transition offense.
Phil, hey, the offense in the first few games for you guys, I mean, you had some good individual performances. I'm thinking of, Namari the first half against St. John's, but it was free flowing. The ball was popping around. It seems like maybe there's a little more one-on-one lately. Is that accurate? And if so, why?
Our movement. Yeah, it's a great point. We're making a pass and we're freezing. And we watched a great length of offensive tape yesterday with them about quicker movement, not faster movement. I mean, we are what we are in terms of foot speed, but you can be quicker, and we need to be quicker. I'm thinking of last several games, like throwing the ball almost in an ISO to Olivier, to Terrace Reed. And if you look at the whole picture, Andrew, that the other 4 guys are stationary. Well, that can't work. That's not what we're about. We're about ball and player movement. And great point by you that our player movement has grounded almost to a halt, and that has to change. That's one. And 2, I've said this a couple of different times in different settings. We're not running the ball. We're not pushing the ball. Is that minutes? It makes me wonder, since I'm handling the substitutions, is it too many minutes? Do we have to go shorter spurts? Do we have to get, another guard to kind of like set that pace and set that tempo? But even the other night, getting to whatever we got to against Indiana point-wise, it was the stretch with Olivier in the second half, the stretch with Will Cheddar, but didn't feel like us. It didn't feel like second half against Memphis, we had it, but first half we didn't. Texas Tech, we didn't have it for 40 minutes. Stanford, it took us breaking the ball loose off defensively to really kind of get that energy. And, you know, there's not a magic number. We don't have to get to 80, but we have to be more fluid offensively.
Thanks.
Hey, Phil, I have a couple questions about Olivier. Obviously he's kind of taking on a larger scoring role than he ever did at Tennessee. I guess just how do you think he's handled that so far?
And again, I'm not like trying to pick it apart. I'm surprised his turnovers. I think his turnovers are too high for a player that is this skilled. I think that his comfort in the offense is obvious. His willingness and I mean, for another term, the demand that he put that we want him taking shots is a big deal. And he's like the rest of our team. We have to get back to like outrun your opponent. The baskets that he's making are tough baskets. I mean, he is being guarded. I think that, like, even though it's tough to say anybody's enjoying what we've gone through the last 5 games, but I do think that he enjoys being a focal point and doesn't do it with ego, but does it with the intent of his team winning.
Hey, Phil, what do you make of Jalen Llewellyn's return so far this season, and should we expect his role to just keep increasing as the games go on?
Oh yes, I mean we're very hopeful, you know, and what has been impressive is that when he hit the go button, he's now not taking time off from practice, right? So if we're out there for an hour and 40, he's out there for an hour and 40. There's a little bit more pop. He's really committed defensively, and you know, it's just, I've said before, like, our players respecting and recognizing what he went through. You know, it was about a year ago, I guess, almost to this day, when he did it. And to watch him go through these stages, and you'd like to think no one's alone, but he was alone in that, right? With Chris Williams. Shout out to Chris Williams for staying with Jalen and lifting him. And I'm sure they had a lot of conversations when Jalen just didn't know. I mean, come on, the kid has a Princeton degree. So it's love of the game that is driving this. And I hope that all of our players through osmosis get that love of the game. And like the mentality of, maybe today is your last practice. I don't want to be morbid, but maybe it is. Did you leave everything out there? So that's his basketball role. You know, it's coming. I mean, a bucket against Oregon was a creative layup, and the 3 the other night was comfortable. And, you know, it's more me than being told. Like, I've kept him these first stretches to about 4-minute stretches in each half. So.
And then quickly to follow up on that, with his return, what does that mean for George Washington's minutes? I know he didn't get in the game last game. So what are you expecting to see his role then become with Llewellyn returning?
Well, I still think that we probably need another guard in the rotation, whether it's George or Yo-Yo. That's still to be worked out on the practice floor. What you have in both of those guys is you have remarkable sponges. They're taking everything in, and we are, you know, George is the purest shooter. So we want to make sure that that he stays confident and stays ready. And that's all we can ask. I mean, it's not, well, if he comes in and you say, well, look, these 3 plays weren't good. No, it's just a matter of circumstance right now. Like, everybody wants to play, for sure. You just have to figure out where they're needed and how they can help. Because this is still about winning games and not, for lack of a better term, massaging egos.